This is 2022 Internal Mathematics Paper 1. So in this representation, I'm going to answer question 21 and question 22. Okay. So as for question 21, it's coming from linear programming. Linear programming. So now the things that you need to know under linear programming are these things that I'm going to share with you. Okay. So the first thing, whenever you see a dotted line, okay. So whenever you see a dotted line, you are going to use this symbol that I'm going to give you. So whenever you see a dotted line, you are supposed to use the greater than, or you are supposed to use what? Less than, depending to the side which is not shaded. Okay. Whenever you see a dotted line, you are supposed to use what? Greater than, or you can use less than, depending on the side which is not shaded. Okay. So apart from that one, let's say for example, if you see a solid line, you're supposed to use greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. Now on this part here, it depends on the side which is not what? Shaded. So these things are very, very simple. Just know, you need just to know them, okay? These things are going to help you. So whenever you see a solid line, you're supposed to use greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to, depending on the side which is what? Not shaded. Okay. So when answering this question, the first thing you need to start with what? The lines which are cutting only on one axis. Okay, you need to start with what? Lines which are cutting only on one axis. Okay, so in this case here, the question is saying, write the four inequalities that define the unshaded. So in they say unshaded, which means the part which is not shaded. Unshaded region R in the diagram below. Okay, so like the way I was saying, you need to start with what? The lines which are cutting only on one axis. So I can see like this line here, since this one is the origin, this one is what? The origin. So this line here is cutting only on one axis. So in this case, it is cutting where? It is cutting through x-axis. And this one here is cutting through what? The y-axis. Okay. And this one here is cutting through what? X-axis. But the last one is cutting in y-axis and also in x-axis. So the line which is cutting in y-axis and in x-axis, we are going to answer it later. Okay. So let me start with the lines which are cutting in one axis. So let me start with this one here. So as you can see, this one is what? A solid what? Line. Which means, since this one is a solid line, I'm supposed to use greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to, depending on the part which is not shaded. So in this case here, the part which is not shaded here, is it greater than or less than 4? See, this one is 4? Yes, this one is what? 4. Now, is this part which is not shaded, is it greater than or equal to 4, or less than or equal to 4? It is what? Less than or equal to what? 4. So now, when answering this one, you need to identify the axis the line is cutting. So in this case here, this line here is cutting where? In x-axis. So I'm going to write x. Now which symbol am I going to use here? It is what? Less than or equal to. This is what? It is solid. So I'm going to say less than or equal to. Now, it is cutting at which point? Or at which number? It is cutting at what? 0.4. So I'm going to write what? 4. Which means, as for the first one, you are done. Okay. So the next one is saying, this one is saying what? It is cutting where? In y-axis. Now as you can see, this one is a what? A dotted line, which means you are supposed to use greater than or less than, depending on the side which is not what? Shaded. Now, is this part which is not shaded greater than or less than? It is what? It is greater than 2. This one is what? 2. So this part here which is not shaded, it is what? Greater than what? 2. The reason why I'm saying this part here which is not shaded is greater than 2, because as you go up, you're going to find that the numbers will be what? Increasing. So now I'm going to identify in which axis is this line cutting in where? In y-axis. So I'm going to write y. Then which symbol am I going to use? Greater than. Okay. At which point? 2. Then after this one, we are done. Okay. Then the next one, we need also to answer the next one, which is this one. Now as you can see, this line here is cutting where? At -2. Then the part which is not shaded here, you need to identify if it is greater than or less than. Now what usually happens to the negatives is like this. If you're having -2, -1 and 0, which one here is bigger? The biggest number here is what? 0. Followed by what? -1. Then lastly, it's what? -2. So -2 is the smallest number here. So you're going to find that as you move from -2 up, as you move from -2, then you are approaching 0. You're going to find that the numbers, when you move from -2 going to point 0 here, or at the origin, you're going to find that they will be increasing. So you're going to find that the part which is not shaded here, it is what? Greater than. Okay, now remember, this one here is what? A solid line. And a solid line, you are required to use what? Greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. So I'm going to say this one is cutting through which axis? It is cutting through the x-axis. So I'm going to say x. Then which symbol am I going to use? It is greater than or equal to. Now at which point is this line? At which point is this line cutting? It is cutting at what? Negative what? 2. So I'm going to write -2. So in this part here, we are done. Okay. Now let's try to answer the last one. So the last one, this line here is what? It is solid. And it is cutting through what? At point 6 in y-axis. And at point what? 8 in x what? Axis. So I'm going to correct the coordinates here. So I'm going to say the coordinates, they obey the layout of x, what? Y. Now, this value here, which is 6, is the value of what? This 6 here is the value of what? Y. So which means I'm going to say in the y-axis, x is equal to what? 0. So the coordinates at this point here, I'm going to say it is what? 0, what? 6. Like this. Then at this point here, this one is what? The x-axis. Now in x-axis, y is equal to what? 0. Which means 8 is the value of what? Of x. Remember? So I'm going to put here x's coordinates, they obey the layout of x, what? Y. So I'm going to say 8, 0. Okay. So I'm going to show you a simple way of answering this one. So I'm going to say y is equal to what? y1 is equal to gradient, open bracket, y minus what? y1. Okay. Now since you know that gradient is equal to what? y2 minus what? y1 over x2 minus what? x1. Okay. So which means where there is gradient, I'm going to put this. Where there is gradient, I'm going to put what? This in place of what? The gradient. So the formula is going to look like this, okay? So y minus what? y1 is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus what? x1 then open bracket, x minus what? x1. Okay, like this. So in this part here, I'm going to now name the what? The coordinates. This one is going to be my x1, this one is going to be my y1, this one is going to be my x2, this one is going to be my what? My y2. So I'm going to say y I don't have, y1 it is what? 6 is equal to what of y2? y2 is what? It is 0. So I'm going to say 0 minus y1 it is what? 6 over x2 it is what? 8 minus x1 it is what? 0. Then open bracket, x we don't have, minus x1 it is what? 0. Then close. Then from there now, I'm going to say y minus 6 is equal to negative 6 minus, let me see, 0 minus 6, I'm going to get what? Negative 6. Then 8 minus 0, I'm going to get what? 8. Then open bracket, x minus what? 0. Then close. Okay. Then from there now I'm going to say y is equal to, so as on this part here, I'm going to cross this one here. I'm going to cross this one to the other side. Okay. So this one is negative what? Negative 6. So in it causes an equal sign, it will change to what? Plus. So in this part, by doing so, I need also to multiply this one here with everything inside the what? The brackets. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to do like this. 2 into 6, I'm going to get what? 3. Then 2 into 8, I'm going to get what? 4. Okay. So I'm going to say negative 3 over 4 multiplied by x, I'm going to get what? Negative 3 over what? 4x. Then negative 3 over 4 multiplied by negative 0 or multiplied by 0, I'm going to get what? 0. Now remember, I have crossed this one here, which is negative 6 to the other side. So it is going to change to what? Positive what? 6. Okay. So now, remember, we are talking about what? Inequalities. Now this one here is what? It is an equation, not an inequality. So which means here we need to change this sign here into an equality. An inequality? Yes. So what defines here the inequality? It is what? Y. So in this case here we are having what? Y here. Now I'm going to ask you, is this part here which is not shaded, this part here which is not shaded, is it greater than or equal to 6 or less than or equal to 6? It is what? Less than or equal to what? 6. So which means on this part here, I'm going to remove what? The equal sign and put what? Less than or equal to what? These things here. So I'm going to say y is less than or equal to negative 3 over what? 4x plus 6. Which means on this part here, you are done. Okay. So let's move on to the next one. The next one is saying, which is question A. Given that y is equal to 2x to the power 2 minus 4x plus 3, find dy dx. Okay. So when finding dy dx, I'm going to say solutions. So dy dx. So the next thing I'm going to write dy dx. Dy dx. Dy dx is equal to, so in this part here, as you can see this number here, which is what? 2, is going to multiply with the base, which is what is base 2 here. So it's more like you're multiplying 2 multiplied by 2, you're going to get what? Or I'm going to get what? 4. So the same power, I'm going to, or it will be reduced by what? By 1. So it's more like I'm saying 2 minus what? 1. Then the answer is going to be what? 1. So in this case here, I'm going to remain with what? Single x like this. Okay. So this part here, I'm having what? 1. So 1 multiplied by negative 4, I'm going to get what? Negative 4. Then 1 minus 1, I'm going to get what? 0. So it's more like x to the power 0. And n number less to the power 0 is what? 1. Now this one here multiplied by what? 4. I'm going to get what? 4. So as you can see here, the numbers were arranged in what? In descending order of their what? Power. So here I'm having single x, which means as for the constant, it is going to look like this. 3x to the power 0. Since here I'm having 1, so which means here I'm going to have 0. So it's what? 3x to the power 0. So 0 multiplied by 3, I'm going to get what? 0. So under Dwight x, a constant number becomes what? 0. So which means on this part here, we are done for Dwight x. That's all. Okay. So the next one, which is question B, saying the sketch shows the graph of y is equal to x to the power 2 minus 2x minus what? 4. So this is our graph. Yeah. So the first question is saying find the coordinates of A and B. So the coordinates of what? A and what? B. Now A and B, they are where? In the x-axis. So which means on this part here, in x-axis, y is equal to what? 0. So now for us to find the coordinates of A and B, and mind you, the coordinates, they obey the layout of what? X, y. So in this part here, for me to find the coordinates of A and B, I'm going to use what? The same formula or the same equation that I've been given in this question. So now I was saying in the x-axis, y is equal to what? 0. So since y is equal to 0, so where there is y, I'm going to put what? 0. So I'm going to say 0 is equal to what? X to the power 2 minus 2x minus what? 8. So in this part here, I'm just going to rearrange the numbers by swapping them. Okay, so this 0 will be on the other side and these numbers will be on this side here, which is what? X to the power 2 minus 2x minus what? 8 is equal to what? 0. So on this part here, don't change anything here. Don't change anything. This one here is not crossing an equal sign. This one here is not crossing an equal sign. I'm just interchanging the what? The numbers. Okay. So on this part here, I'm going to find the product. So the product, you are going to find it when you multiply the number here multiplied by this one here. So in this case here, this one here is what? A quadratic equation. So a quadratic equation looks like this, okay? A quadratic equation looks like this. Ax to the power 2 plus bx plus what? C is equal to what? 0. So for you to find the sum, then for you to find the product, you're going to multiply the value of A multiplied by what? C. So the value of A is what? 1. Then the value of C is what? 8, which is the constant. So when I multiply, I'm going to get what? Negative 8. Then the sum here, you take the what? The value of B. So in this case here, the value of B is what? It is this one here, which is having the variable to the highest power of what? 1. So sum here is what? Negative what? 2. Okay. Now, on the factors, look for two numbers. You need to look for what? Two numbers that you're going to multiply to get what? Negative 8. And when you add them, you're going to get what? Negative 2. So in this case here, I'm going to choose what? negative 4 and what? 2. Because if I multiply negative 4 multiplied by 2, I'm going to get what? Negative 8. And when I add them, I'm going to get what? Negative 2. Okay, so where there is sum, or let me say, where there is what? The value of b, I'm going to replace what? With the value. Where there is value of b, I'm going to replace with what? The factors. So in this case here, I'm going to say x to the power 2 plus 2x, which is this one, minus 4x, which is this one, minus 8, which is this one, is equal to what? 0. Then from there now I'm going to group them into 2 terms, okay, like this. So I'm going to ask myself, what is common here? It is what? X. So I'm going to factor out x. Then I'm going to say x into x squared. I'm going to get what? X. Then x into positive what? 2x. I'm going to get what? Positive 2. Okay. So that when you multiply these numbers with this x here with everything, you're going to get these numbers here. Okay. So from there now I'm going to say what is common here. So what is common here is what? Negative 4. Here I'm having negative, even here I'm having what? Negative. So I'm going to say negative 4. I'm going to factor it out. Then open bracket. Negative 4 into negative 4x. I'm going to get what? Positive x. So this part here is more like I'm doing like this. Divided by what? 4. So this negative and this one here, they are going to cancel each other. Okay. So 4 and 4. 4 into 4, 1. 4 into 4, that's what? 1. So here we are going to remain what? Only x here. That's why I'm putting x here. Okay. So negative 4 into negative 8. Negative 8 divided by what? Negative 4. So negative and negative, they are going to cancel each other. Then 4 into 8, I'm going to get what? 2. So it's more like plus 2 is equal to what? 0. So now as you can see here, we are having the same thing. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to do like this. Okay, so I'm going to say this x here minus 4 is equal to what? 0. Then on this part here, I'm just going to choose what? Only one. Since I'm having these two which are similar, so I'm just going to choose one. So I'm going to say x plus what? 2 is equal to what? 0. So I'm going to say x, when this one here, which is negative 4, crosses an equal sign, it is going to change to what? Positive. So I'm going to say x is equal to what? Positive 4. Or x is equal to, when this positive 2 crosses an equal sign, it is going to change to what? Negative 2. So in this part here, when you leave your answer like this, they are not going to mark you. Okay. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to do like this. I'm going to identify which side here, which side of x is a positive side and a negative side. So this side here, it is the negative side of x. And this side here is the positive side of what? Of x. Now, according to the values that I have here, which means this one here is going to be the what? The value of a here, or this one is going to be the part of what? Of a. And this positive 4 is going to be the part of what? Of b. Now remember, I was saying the coordinates, they obey the layout of what? X, y. Now, in x-axis, y is equal to what? 0. Now at this point here, since this point here, or this side here, it is the negative side or the negative part of what? Of x. And we have this value here, which is the value of x. So for us to find the coordinates of a, I'm going to say a, open bracket. Since they obey the layout of this one, so I'm going to say negative 2, comma. In x-axis, y is equal to what? 0. So I'm going to put 0 here. Okay. And b, open bracket. The value of x is what? 4. In x-axis, y is equal to what? 0. So this one here is our final answer for Roman numeral number what? Number 1. So now, as for Roman numeral number 2, is saying find the coordinates of the mean, or let me say, find the coordinates of the minimum point on the what? On the graph. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to do like this. The minimum point on the graph, it is this point here, okay? This point here, which is this one here, okay? So the first thing here, I'm going to find the value of x by using this formula. So I'm going to say x is equal to negative b over 2x. Okay, so now in this part here, since I was saying the quadratic equation, it obeys with the layout of ax to the power 2 plus bx plus c is equal to what? 0. Which means the value of b here, it is what? Negative 2. Okay? So where there is b, I'm going to put what? Negative what? 2. Now remember, in the formula here also we are having what? A negative. So don't forget to put the what? The brackets. So I'm going to say this negative here, it is this one. Then open bracket, the value of b is what? Negative 2. Like this. Then over 2. Then the value of a here, since a is this one, so the value of a is what? 1. So 2 open bracket, 1. Okay. Then here I'm going to say is equal to negative multiplied by negative, I'm going to get what? Positive. So this one is going to be what? Positive 2. Over 2 multiplied by 1, I'm going to get what? 2. 2 into 2, I'm going to get what? 1. So this one is the value of what? Of x. So now for me to find the minimum point on the graph, I'm going to use now the same one, the same equation. Okay, so since here I'm finding the minimum point on the equation, on the graph, it's more like I'm finding the value of y here. Okay, so I'm going to say y is equal to, so where there is x, I'm going to put what? I'm going to put 1. Where there is x, I'm going to put what? 1. So is equal to, open bracket, 1 to the power 2 minus 2 open bracket 1 minus what? 8. Then from there now, y is equal to 1 to the power 2, it is what? It is 1. So in this part it's more like you're multiplying 1 multiplied by what? 1. Then the answer is going to be what? 1. Then negative 2 multiplied by 1, I'm going to get what? Negative 2 minus 8. So y is equal to 1 minus 2. I'm going to get what? Negative 1 minus what? 8. Then the value of y is going to be negative what? 9. So this one here is our minimum point on the what? On the graph. So in this part here, we are done. Thanks for watching.